All right, guys, joining us now on Locked On QB1, right here on Locked On Eagles. It's one of the best quarterback evaluators to me in all of NFL media. It's Mark Schofield, a good friend of the show. He's been on before, not during the regular season, though, to talk about this roller coaster of a season so far with Jalen Hurts. He joins Gino and I now. Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. Great to be with you. Excited to be here. It is a lovely Friday morning here in the DC area. Very excited about that. Got some yard work ahead of me. But
Yep.
before that, good to talk some Jalen Hurts with you guys, and that's always
Yeah.
fun.
For sure. And, Mark, it's been an up and down season. I think there were more downs through the first, I would say, 6 to 7 games. And I think part of the struggles early, I think, was a lack of balance in the offense. But I also thought he made things tougher on the play calling in the offense with his inefficiencies, especially from the pocket as a passer. But the last 2 weeks, we've really been impressed with his pocket presence, I would say anticipation, accuracy, and just overall decision making. Like, what are you seeing from the tape, especially the last 2 games against the Chargers and Broncos?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the last couple of weeks we've seen sort of a jump in the developmental curve. Like you said, like earlier in the season, there were a lot of things that still made you concerned about Jalen Hurts from a developmental standpoint, bailing from clean pockets, missing opportunities, missing throws, missing reads. And there were just sort of flashes here and there. It was like, okay, yeah, if we could see more of that kind of play, we could feel a lot more comfortable, a lot more confident about him going forward. These past 2 weeks, you've seen a lot more of that. The balance has really shifted, and from we're seeing just flashes of good stuff to we're seeing a lot more consistent good quarterback play, particularly from the pocket. I do think your point about Sirianni and sort of the offense and constructing the offense conceptually is a good one. I
Yeah.
think they've kind of found their offensive identity. They've found some balance. They've found a way to establish the run, use the run game to set up a lot of what they do throwing the football. I also think against Denver, they did a lot where they moved Hurts around in the pocket. There was an early throw he made on the move, that sail route, the out route. The first touchdown to Devonta Smith on the out and up, they slid him as well. That was a sort of half roll design off of play action. So Sirianni deserves a lot of credit, I think, as well for how he sort of tweaked the offense in recent weeks. But to Hurts specifically, that Denver game was the best I've seen him play.
I
I
agree.
mean, I think obviously the first touchdown, throwing that on the move, the second one to Smith, also a nice throw from the pocket. But more than anything else, the play that I've highlighted, many other people have highlighted. Dan Orlovsky just highlighted it yesterday. I highlighted it on Monday. That third down slide and throw to Goddard
Yep.
on the four verticals concept. 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, he's running that. He's pulling that down and he's
10
running
times out of
that.
10. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could even, guys, and you probably saw it too. You could see his mind. He's like, I'm going to pull this down and run. He starts to pull the ball down and he's like, no, I've got an opportunity here. He resets himself, fights that urge to bail, stays in the pocket and makes a throw. That more than anything else, I think, is the biggest sign that it's starting to come together for him. And as I remind people all the time, every week in the show I do with Rachel Prevet, where we talk about Hurts, this is his fourth offense in 4 years. Like,
Sure.
I know it's his second year in the NFL, but you have to give him that context. He's finally sort of figured out what this offense is. They've finally sort of figured out what this offense is, and it's starting to click. So, yeah, early the season, very shaky. Much better now, and I think that arrow is really sort of trending up.
Yeah,
Gino, go
Mark,
ahead.
you made a great point about how he used to bail out of the pocket, and on this show we talked about that all the time. It's like if he does nothing and just sits there, he'll be more successful keeping his eyes down the field. Have you seen that evolution in the run game to a more out of necessity and out of need to more than it was kind of he just wanted to get outside the pocket and he was comfortable with that the last couple weeks?
Yeah, Gino, absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's a tough balance that athletic quarterbacks have to make. When Jalen Hurts walked on a football field at Alabama, most times he was the most athletic guy on the field. Like same thing at Oklahoma, especially at high school. Like every time he played, he was the most athletic guy on the field, and so there were times when that athleticism allowed to, if you didn't like a read, you didn't like a concept, whatever, I could just run and make something happen.
Right.
When you get to the NFL level, there might be days when Hurts is the most athletic guy on the field, but not every day. And, you have to start to learn that I can't always do that, but it's a muscle memory thing. Like it's that instinct that has been built into his mind over years of playing football at a very high level and being the most athletic guy on the field that I can just run and make it happen. It's something that young athletic quarterbacks have to work through. And we're seeing that process start to work where against Detroit, for example, there were plays with just a 3 or 4 man rush. He had no reason to bail, and he starts running around. And it's like, Jalen, man, you've got a clean pocket. Like, just stay in there. Like, that's where it's nice and safe. It's tough for quarterbacks, especially the athletic ones, to remember that pocket is safety. Like, running around with guys like Von Miller and Leonard Floyd and some of these guys, Matthew Judon, that can get to the edge with you. That's where danger is. So you've got to stay in the pocket and make reads and throws. We're starting to see more of that from Jalen Hurts, and it's a big developmental step forward, because the other thing to remember is plays are constructed where concepts are tied to the quarterback's footwork. Protections are tied to where you expect the quarterback to be. And if you've got routes breaking open at 10 yards downfield and you're expecting a 3-step gun drop, and that's going to time it all up, and you start running around and everything becomes a scramble drill, sometimes you can make plays, but most of the time things are going to fall apart around it. So that's also something that's important to him learning to just stay within the comfort of the pocket. It's safe, make some reads and throws from there, and you'll be a better quarterback going forward.
Yeah, Mark, this is kind of my next question is kind of more of a future projection, but I think eventually, you know, they've done a great job of striking a balance now, or I don't even know if it's a balance, but they've run the football a lot more. And now they've kind of gone on the other side of the spectrum there. I feel like eventually you're going to have to be more 50-50 and throw the football more to win some games. They remind me a lot right now of what the 2018 Baltimore Ravens did when Lamar Jackson first came in as a rookie. You know, and you're seeing the efficiency right now, but you're not seeing, 30 plus attempts. This is kind of, again, like I said, a future projection, but do you think if and when the volume does increase that he can be a guy that still remains efficient when you're throwing 30 plus times, and sometimes you have to win because of that trait?
I think so. I'm hopeful that will be something that we see going forward. It's not something we can sit here and guarantee, and I think you're exactly right, about that comparison to that early Ravens offense, where it was, we're going to really work through the run game. We're going to have like a 40-60 pass run ratio. It can work, but eventually teams are going to figure stuff out. Vance Joseph, the Cardinals defensive coordinator, I heard a quote like 2 weeks ago that was like, you always have to be thinking 3 or 4 weeks ahead, because if you make adjustments not ahead of time, you're going to be late. Teams will have figured you out. So they're going to have to prepare for the moments when they have to throw to win games, because right now it's kind of their run in to win games. I think Hurts can be successful, though, when they do that. I think Hurts can, his touch in the downfield passing game is something that has impressed me dating back to his college days. I thought he was suited for a more vertical offense, and I think we've seen that sort of play itself out. His touch on vertical throws, his ability to read vertical concepts, his decision-making in those moments, I think is key. So I would expect that when they become more pass-heavy, that's what you'll see. But I also think that, look, he's shown you some ability to sort of fight in the pocket is going to be critical to this, because if he remains the guy that stays in the pocket in those situations, he'll have success when they have to throw the football more. But if he reverts to what we saw in, say, weeks 5, 6, 7, where it's, I'm going to run around, I'm not liking what I'm seeing, then we might run into some trouble again.
Yeah, Mark, you brought that point up that if he does revert back, and I know that he has a good relationship with quarterback guru Quincy Avery, how hard of a habit is that to break for quarterbacks, where your first initial instinct is, okay, eyes down and let's get out of here, it looks like trouble? Is that an easy thing to fix? And have you seen quarterbacks be stuck in that way the last couple of years if they have had that problem?
I mean, I think a good example, interesting enough, is Josh Allen. Allen was somebody that at Wyoming, that was his plan B all the time, was, if I don't like my first read, I'm dropping my eyes, I'm running to the right, and then I'm going to make something happen downfield. Lamar Jackson is another, and interestingly enough, Coach Bertino's book, which I would highly recommend, he basically just opens up his entire playbook. He talks about, from a quarterback perspective, like you grade quarterbacks in 2 categories on each play, your decision and your execution. And he kind of created that because of Lamar Jackson, because he said of Lamar, and he wrote it in his book, look, he might look at the first read, not like it, and instead of going to his progressions in that concept like we've coached him to, he's going to pull it down and run for 20 yards. It's like, how can you give that a negative grade? So I'll grade the decision negatively, but the execution gets an A+ from me because of what you can do. So it's something that Lamar had to work through. And I think you saw him start to work through it his final year at Louisville. Still has some moments where he wants to pull the ball down, but you've seen him sort of fight and, make more plays from the pocket. But it's a thing that takes time. And Quincy Avery talking about it this week, put up a nice little video about how he coaches quarterback movement in the pocket, moving, keep your eyes downfield, moving initially short, quick steps to kind of read things out, just create space to make throws. And then ultimately, if you have to bail, then find your alley to do so. But it's a process that it's going to have to keep, that Hurts is going to have to keep working through, and it's something that you can't often work in season upon because you got to worry about getting install done for the Saints game. You've got to worry about the game after that. You've got to go through game plan stuff. There isn't always time to work on mechanics, pocket movement, and the other nuanced things. Mm-hmm. That's where these private quarterback coaches like Tony Rasiopi and Quincy Avery and John Beck and, Tim Jenkins and Jordan Palmer, that's where they make their money, right? That's where you have to do the work in the off season to retrain your mind and your body that when you feel pressure, you don't have to bail. You can slide, you can move around in the pocket a little bit. And to tie it back to Josh Allen, initially in the NFL, he would still bail on stuff. He would try to bail and create, and he still has that club in the bag, don't get me wrong, but it's more of a subtle stuff initially where if he feels some pressure, he'll like slide a little bit, he'll try to create a little bit of space, and if it's still not there for him, then he'll run. And that's sort of two-step process as opposed to a one-step process is much better for quarterbacks.
Yeah, and Mark, you're 100% right that that is a multi-step process. I guess the big question though for Jalen Hurts is if he's going to get that time to develop in those ways. And because the Eagles have this rare opportunity this year with potentially 3 first-round draft picks, a lot of potential veteran quarterbacks on the trade market, you have this quarterback class as well. You have that Dolphins pick. Part of the decision comes down to if you feel like giving Hurts that time is worth it compared to maybe giving another prospect time or trying to trade for a veteran. And so I kind of wanted to ask you, comparing Hurts to this 2022 draft class, how do you compare him to the likes of Malik Willis if he was in this draft and Matt Corral? And maybe, if you don't have a shot at those guys, the next tier, like Desmond Ridder and, Kenny Pickett and those prospects, how do you compare him to those players if he was in this draft?
Yeah, I think there are some quarterbacks around the league right now that are going to benefit and get an extra year of time to develop because of this quarterback class that's coming out. Now, look, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, Desmond Ridder, Carson Strong, there's some talented kids in this class. But I do think that ultimately, whatever quarterback comes off the board first at 5, 8, whatever, to whichever team, the team that drafts him at that point will probably have that player graded at 25 on their big board. I mean, it's not like last year's class where you've got guys that are going to grade out as top 5 players on big boards. It's not that class. And the ceiling might be there for guys like Willis, for guys like Matt Corral. Kenny Pickett might have the Mac Jones sort of floor of that group. But I think that guys like Jalen Hurts, guys like, say, Daniel Jones, that there are some questions about from a developmental standpoint, they might get the benefit of this being a little bit of a weaker class. Because I think sitting here right now, given the trend we've seen from Jalen Hurts in the past couple of weeks, given the growth we're starting to see from him, provided this continues, if we get into, say, December, and we're still seeing this upward curve in his growth and development, and he's starting to throw the ball more, and he's still efficient, and he's still making reads and throws and stuff like that, I think it would be hard for Howie Roseman to say, this has been great, but we're going to go with one of these guys. Now, if a Russell Wilson falls into your lap or an Aaron Rodgers or something like that, yeah, sure. But if absent something like that, I think you look at the curve from Jalen Hurts, the development he's made over the past couple of weeks, and say, there's no sense in resetting the quarterback clock again. This kid's trending in the right direction. We've seen some growth in Sirianni. We've also seen the ability in Sirianni to develop him and get him to where he is right now. Let's continue this rather than tearing it all down and having a rebuild. And let's use those 3 first-round picks potentially on positions of need. Address the trenches, address the second level, address, if you want to add another receiver, whatever you want to do, put stuff around him rather than trying to get a new quarterback.
Mark, it's early too in the process. Obviously it's still in season, but do you have a favorite prospect at quarterback in this class?
I mean, I think the guy that intrigues me the most is Matt Corral. He showed a lot of growth over the past 2 years. I mean, speaking of quarterback development, you're talking about a guy that had 5 picks against LSU, 6 against Arkansas. He's really toned down the mistakes. He's showing you the ability to make some reads and throws from the pocket. He's showing you the ability to move in the pocket. He's showing the ability to manipulate defenders with his eyes or to flash the ball and pump fakes and little things like that. Certainly playing for Lane Kiffin, he gets a lot of creative concepts to work through. Kiffin's a great offensive play designer. Corral is certainly interesting. Willis is interesting, but there's a lot of boom bust potential there. Incredibly talented, but you're seeing some repeated mistakes. He had an interception against Middle Tennessee State on a fake screen and go concept, and I highlighted that in the video I did on him a couple weeks ago. He had the same mistake against Mississippi early in that game. So you want to see him learn from those things, but incredibly talented, absolute cannon for an arm. Carson Strong, very talented, has a tremendous arm. The medicals were big for him because he's got a knee injury history, doesn't move as well as some of the other guys. And so that's going to be an issue. Kenny Pickett's a baller, man. Like that kid's had quite a rise. I mean, he had an opportunity to go to the Senior Bowl last year, decided, no, I'm going to take the super senior year because of COVID, come back, huge win against Clemson, another big win against UNC. They get an opportunity here to lock down that ACC Coastal and, go to the ACC championship game. And, that's going to be an impressive run for him. Throws with good leverage. I know his quarterback coach, Tony Rassiope, they've been working on stuff from a mental perspective, and he reads concepts well. These are all guys that I think probably are like late first round guys. Desmond Ridder too. I don't want to ignore him. He's another talented kid that's showing some good touch in the downfield passing game. Has some ball placement issues that could be, sorted out. I don't know if it's a mechanical issue or what. So there's some intriguing guys. I like Corral the most right now. Yep. Obviously, there's some football left to be played. And then the Senior Bowl, the draft circuit and things like that. But I like them. It's just I think the NFL is going to view them as sort of late day one guys, as opposed to last year. It was like we get 5 guys that are going to go in the top half of the first round.
Right.
I want to ask you on that question of ceiling, Mark. You mentioned that for these quarterbacks, like we always ask, what is a prospect's ceiling? I saw Jalen Hurts at the Senior Bowl 2 years ago, and I said, I don't know what his ceiling is based on his traits. Now I'm looking at him and I'm saying that ceiling might be a little bit higher than I had expected in the past. What do you think the cap is for Jalen Hurts? Because the arm strength questions, the pocket presence questions, they are starting to answer themselves. So maybe we might have kind of limited his perception as a quarterback. And I'd like to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think ceiling is Dak. And there were some people that made Dak comparisons. I think Greg Cosell made the Dak comparison to Jalen Hurts, back when he was coming out and say, look, that's the ceiling. Like you could get somebody that plays like Dak Prescott because you have the mobility part, but you have, the ability to push the ball downfield, the ability to throw a touch. Those are things that Dak does well. Dak's shown you more anticipatory throws over the past 2 seasons where Hurts has started to add that to his repertoire as well. Now, will Jalen Hurts get to Dak Prescott? That's the $64,000 question, right? And sitting here right now, I don't know. Hurts' ceiling might be more of, a Tannehill type or a Baker type where it's like, yeah, you need things to be right around him, but he can make some throws. He can, win at some games for you, but, he's not the elite guy, but you still need things to be right around him. And, that's still a guy that you can win games with. That's a guy you can get to the playoffs with, make a Super Bowl run with. And so, whether he gets there or he gets to the Dak sort of ultimate ceiling remains to be seen. But I think best case scenario, if things break right, you could be looking at like a Dak Prescott type quarterback, say next year or into the year after that.
Mark, last question for you, and it's just more of an NFL question. Like the playoff picture right now is pretty jumbled at the bottom in the wild card race in both the AFC and the NFC. The Eagles, even at 4-6, I mean, it felt like the sky was falling after that Raiders loss, but a win against the Saints this week could put them into the wild card spot at 7, and then right behind the Saints at 6. Who do you like between? I mean, there's so many teams right now, but in the NFC, like with those final 2 spots, the 6th and 7th spot, I know it's early, but like, do you have a favorite for those 2 spots that you like?
I mean, I was talking to somebody that's at the collegiate level, but obviously keeps an eye on the NFL. And he was basically saying, I'm buying some Eagle stock right now, and part of it is you look at the schedule, they get past the Saints game with a win. You've got 2 games against the Giants and 2 games against Washington. Like those are 4 very winnable games. Like, so the schedule sets up extremely favorably for them. I mean, it's such a strange season when you start looking at like the playoff picture and you start thinking about, okay, well, who's going to get in? Do you buy Minnesota? San Francisco is intriguing because, they certainly have a recipe for the Rams, and if Garoppolo doesn't make mistakes and if they keep running the ball effectively, they can certainly win some games. I was in on Atlanta until Patterson went down. We saw what happened to them last night. The Eagles are right in the mix of things. If they win this game against the Saints, and let's not forget Jalen Hurts' first start went up against that Dennis Allen defense and played extremely well and delivered a win that shocked everybody. They win that game. They get to 5-6 with 4 very winnable games coming up. And they get Dallas late.
Yep.
Maybe Dallas doesn't have anything to play for. Maybe seeding's already decided and they decide to rest everybody, because if they have the one, they'll probably give people like a series or 2 and then sit down. Or if they're already locked into a non-bye, they might sit guys down to rest them. They could sort of steal that one as well. And so, like I said, I've got people telling me they're buying Eagle stock. I can see why.
Mark Schofield joining us right here on Locked On QB1 on Locked On Eagles, one of the best quarterback evaluators in the game. You can follow him on Twitter at Mark Schofield. He's writing stuff on the NFL Wire. He's on podcasts on SB Nation, Pat's Pulpit, BGN Radio, video, blogging with the boys. A lot of great content from Mark. And Mark, we always enjoy you coming on the show, man. And let's do it again soon. All right.
Absolutely. Would love it. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.
Appreciate you, Mark.